to TheSeireitei, a Bleach fandom community podcast brought to you by the new and improved Yami Roomba. It's not very good at sensing what needs to be sucked up, nor can it suck up any angst you may have just lying around. But hey, for everything else, it's good. My name is Nomi, and today I'm joined by Shiki.
Hello, long time no see.
Long time no see, it's great to have you back. How you doing?
Very good, how about you?
Yeah, I'm doing great. The sun is shining for once, so you know it's all good. But I mean, it's pretty late for you there, isn't it? So I really shouldn't talk about sun.
The sun's just coming up.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, well, today we've got some pretty angsty episodes. I want to say it's like between Ichigo and Ishida, the amount of angst that's just exuding off these two, it's very high school drama-esque.
Yeah, no kidding. It's like Ichigo, definitely. It's depression is actually seen in the show, and I look forward to talking about it.
Oh, good. I'm glad. Well, on that note, then, should we just get in with our episode summaries?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so in episode 112, The Commencement of War, Vizards and Arrancars, having just defeated Grand Fisher, Isshin Kurosaki is joined by Kisuke Uehara. They exchange words, namely Kisuke asking if Isshin is satisfied with his revenge, to which Isshin replies with that he was never really hated the hollow that killed his wife, only his own regret at not being able to save her. Meanwhile, Shinji is still acting sus in school in his attempts to recruit Ichigo into the team known as the Vizards. He fails. Ichigo has much too much angst to think of anything else, so Shinji on his way home, and we meet Hiyori, a tiny female with a huge temper who practically beats up Shinji and even threatens to beat up Orihime and Chad when they turn up to ask what Shinji wants with Ichigo. The episode ends with an angsty Ishida finding his resolve and reluctantly asking his dad for help in regaining his Quincy powers.
Nice. Now we head off with episode 113. Ichigo returns home with weighty thoughts on his mind as he struggles with the possibility that his inner hollow may be a danger to those closest to him. Meanwhile, two new Arrancar make an impact as the one named Yami causes havoc by sucking all the weaker souls nearby, killing many. Chad and Orihime make it to the scene in time to save Tatsuki, but find Yami is too powerful to face alone. And upon seeing Orihime's abilities, Ulquiorra questions the nature of her powers. Thankfully, Ichigo manages to arrive just in time, hopefully to save the day.
Whew, so we've not only is there like a lot of just thoughts, feelings, emotions, memories and links back to previous episodes that we've got, but we've also got new things that are happening. We've got the introduction of these two new characters, these Arrancars that, I don't know, we've met the Arrancar of Grand Fisher's form of Arrancar, but these two Arrancars just seem so much more sophisticated. Is that a word? Is that the right word to use in this situation? I don't know. They just seem different.
I would say almost more, it also feels like a bad word, but regal, almost like kind of they are holier than thou, while Grand Fisher was more of barbaric, kind of.
Yeah.
I mean,
so they've got...
Yeah, it kind of plays into, like, I believe it was almost like when Urahara said that Grand Fisher was forced into becoming a Arrancar, possibly, instead of naturally evolving into one. Maybe that has something to do with it?
Possibly, yeah. Like we've as well from the clips, we can see that Grand Fisher has only just gone through the process of removing his mask and becoming that Arrancar. Mm-hmm. Whereas for these two, it's almost as if they have been this way a while. They've kind of got the lay of the land a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But I suppose we can come back to them later, because that, of course, we didn't meet them until episode 113. We can't jump the gun with these two new characters here. So let's go back to episode 112. And what did you think?
We definitely learn a lot more, and it really rams in a bunch of information out of nowhere, from the Arrancar learning what they are effectively to even the Vizards, where, yeah, we're just getting a bunch of lore and information rammed at us all in just like the span of a couple minutes from Urahara.
We did. There was so much information, and there's a little bit of like a timeline as well that we got. We know that Isshin's not been a Shinigami for the past 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
Which, so that's something to think about, that's something to contemplate on. Like, so he was, we have the confirmation that he was a Shinigami. He's not just some randomer who likes to wear shikatsu and a disheveled Hiyori in the back. He was actually a Shinigami. Whether or not he was allied with the Soul Society is something that's yet to be seen. But there's something that struck me as really interesting.
What's that?
With the whole conversation.
Mm-hmm.
He says that his only regret in the past 20 years is that he couldn't save Masaki that night. So we know that Masaki died around about 6 years ago when Ichigo was 9. And it was during the day because, they'd just finished school, it was raining, they were walking home from school, and it's daylight outside. So whether or not this is just like maybe a translation error, or it's just something that Kubo forgot and was like, oh, night, generically night, as in it's no longer the day because everyone's finished work and school. Mm-hmm. But it's just something interesting to note that, that's what he regrets, is that he regrets that he couldn't save Masaki that night instead of not hating the hollow that killed her.
Mm. Yeah, that's definitely interesting. It really goes to show that idea of the kind of like maybe the older you get, the more, I guess, you become in the ways of being able to forgive and not necessarily forget, but prioritize things. Because especially since we pretty much know that he was at some point a captain, he must have seen much loss, whether it be from humans or even fellow Shinigami, to many hollows. It can't be his first loss, even though it might be one of his closest.
Yeah, and he's obviously seen it, and the past 20 years, has he just been hiding? Has he been completely knowing of everything that's going on around him? Because there was something else that was said, wasn't there, with Kisuke? Kisuke's like, I'd hate for you to blame me for your diminishing spiritual pressure after all these years.
That's true.
So there's definitely something going on between them. Like, they've known each other at least for 20 years, if not longer. Mm-hmm. Kisuke feels that something that he's done could result in Isshin's lacking of spiritual pressure, which isn't true because Isshin managed to fell the Grand Fisher in one full swoop.
Mm-hmm. If he has a diminishing spiritual pressure, I would be terrified to see what him at full strength is.
Exactly. Like, yeah. I mean, yeah, if he's rusty, like, he's just like, oh, I haven't been a Shinigami for the past 20 years, don't mind me if I'm a little bit rusty, it's like, what were you at the height of your power? Yeah, I mean, we already know he was a captain, so... Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely, there's a whole conversation with regards to around Isshin and Kisuke. And I do want to go in a little bit more detail about it when we hit manga anime differences. But there's something a lot more to be said, and a lot more probably having to read between the lines, or just unfortunately having to wait until maybe we get those answers in later episodes. But there's definitely something more between those two things that aren't being said.
Yeah, there's a lot to it, and I personally am looking forward to learning more about their backstory if we get that, and because there's so much lore building that is hinted to, but of course it's just left up for grabs. Like, maybe, like, we already know that Ichigo definitely has a lot of potential yet to see as a Shinigami. How much does that play into it from his dad? And all these other questions that are yet to be asked.
And then you've got Kon just watching the whole thing from the sidelines.
Yeah, it's like, in that moment, like, we also learn that, I think it was in this episode, but Ishin always knowing that Kon was not Ichigo and not calling him by name.
That's right, yeah, because he's a lot more perceptive than he lets on. Which, I don't know, I'm in two minds about it, really, because his poor son, who's only 15, has been running around saving the world, and he's just been letting him. I mean, great, he's like, I don't know, encouraging independence and setting up for success and all of that sort of stuff. And Ishin's got a very strange parenting style. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, I mean, it
works for some people, it doesn't work for others, so,
Yeah, I mean, like, it kind of goes back to that scene in the graveyard from, like, I believe it was season 1, where he says and, like, implies that Ichigo will do what Ichigo will do, and it's not really his place to shelter him. And it really has that kind of feel of he wants Ichigo to grow into the man he's supposed to become, and that won't happen if he's just out there protecting Ichigo from everything and not letting him actually learn firsthand and grow on his own power.
It's one of those things where I'm definitely excited to see where this is going to go, how much he's been introduced now. We kind of know where Ichigo gets his power from. He is, we spoke about it last episode with the fact that he is a trueborn. As one of the things that came up. So now we have this information, we have this conversation with Kisuke that kind of just fills in, just kind of teases that there was a little bit more to this whole situation, like the whole what happened 20 years ago, that sort of thing. So it's definitely going to be one of those things that's exciting and that we're definitely going to be coming back to when it appears in the episodes, because I don't think we're done with Ishin just yet. He may go back to his drop kicking of Ichigo as soon as he comes in from school, but I don't think we're done with this other Ishin just yet. There's a balance between what we have Ichigo going through and we have Ishido going through. Ichigo is just the whole time he's just trying to figure out this power that he's got inside, whereas the complete opposite, Ishin is lamenting over the loss of power that he no longer has inside. And there's that kind of balance of them both just figuring it all out. There's a nice actually picture in the manga with it's just both of them and they're upside down, kind of like a yin and yang, because they are the balance, and it's just equally. They've both got their issues, but it's different issues, if it makes sense. It's like complete opposite. Let's try that again. Complete opposites of each other. And then the whole time, you don't see him much, but Ishida does go through this whole thought process and then ends up going back to his dad the very next day and going, yeah, you know what? I'm going to take you up on your offer. I want my powers back.
Yeah, but you also think about it from his point of mind. It's like, Ishida, he wants power so that way he can prove himself as a worthy Quincy of being able to like live up to the honor of the noble Quincy world. And he just lost basically everything he staked his entire being on throughout his entire life. Of course you'd want that back. But then you have Ichigo, who is just recently come into this power because it's like only been like a couple months at best, and he is not really fully understanding of all this power. It's understandable to be afraid, especially if you don't have full control over it and there are parts of you that you know are stronger than you and you cannot control.
Yeah. I don't know what else to say to that. It's just how the balance is as well. I mean, you got to feel for both of them, really. And like linking into 113, that whole conversation with the hollow that's inside of him. I mean, hearing voices is enough to send anyone crazy, bless him. So there's definitely, and like you mentioned at the start that you wanted to get into the whole discussion about depression, and there was a lot of, the whole mental health aspect to this whole show. There's a lot to delve in and talk about there as well. So what did you want to say about about Ichigo's depression?
The thing about like depression, and we also gotta know from Japanese culture, mental health in Japan, from all the research I've done, especially back when this show was being produced, was near non-existent. So you gotta wonder what was going through Kubo Sensei's mind of trying to put all this in there. It's not something that you can just like come out about and like admit that you're depressed or admit that you have a lot of thoughts on your mind to your family, to your friends probably. So I would imagine that it's very difficult for someone who lives in that kind of society to feel like it's all on them and that they have to not bottle it up but deal with it themselves, and they can't really seek help normally. And that's like, I'm not sure about society in the UK, but in the US we are very open about our feelings and our mindset, and I would almost say at times too sharing, where we push all of our problems on other people and put it out in the open for everyone to see. And it's like a kind of clashing of cultures that I see when I watch this episode. I understand Ichigo's struggle, having gone through depression myself before, but it's that whole feeling of you don't want to hurt those closest to you, but you recognize that there is something dangerous inside of you and you don't know if you can control it. That constant fear, that questioning of what you should do, not wanting to lose yourself, but still be true and honest to yourself as well. It's like a lot of swirling thoughts and ideas that they try to shove into one episode, and I don't think just that short amount of time will do that thought process justice.
Yeah, it's definitely, and like seeing the different cultural aspects as well with how, especially the difference between the US and Japan, with how it's all kind of perceived. It's definitely very interesting, and especially you've got to remember that this series was what, from 2006, like the early 2000s.
Yeah, and like the manga's even older.
Yeah, so that kind of times have changed, whereas things may be a little bit different now. Back then, at the time of Kubo writing this is how it was, and that's the perception that we need to remember. And even the issues that are getting tackled in this manga are probably leaps and bounds of what other mangas were doing at that time. So it's nice it's not nice, but it's different to see it in this kind of...
Yeah, even if it's not like fully addressed, because I wouldn't imagine that you can address all the nuances and complexities of depression in Japanese society in just half of an episode. But I imagine also Kubo was probably projecting some of his own experiences into Ichigo at this point, because as a mangaka, I don't know how old he was when he first started getting into art and writing, but if he was like in high school or even as a young adult, I imagine he was probably seen somewhat as not normal, or at the very least his practice in drawing and writing weren't something promoted by friends or family. Not that I know for sure, but that would just be my thoughts of what likely would have happened in that kind of society.
Yeah. It's definitely, like, it's a good topic to broach on, and it's something that I think as well that we're definitely going to see it again. This is just basically the start. Ichigo's going through so much right now, and even his past, the trauma that he experienced in his past, it's all going to lead up, and we're definitely going to be seeing a lot more of this, and it's going to be very interesting moving forward with how it all pans out and what kind of steps they take, and what way Ichigo is going to go with this inner this inner voice telling him and threatening to take over. So it's going to be very interesting moving forward, I think.
So what were the differences between the manga and the anime for this episode?
Well then, I have quite a lot. Ignoring anything that happened with the mod souls, because as we say, we don't talk about them. But there was almost like, with the whole conversation between Kisuke and Isshin, there was almost an intentional misdirect with it. Anime Kisuke, when they're talking about the Vizards, and Isshin's talking how they are this group of exiled Shinigami who experimented in hollow powers, and nobody knows if they're friend or foe or what side they lie on or where their loyalties lie. In the anime, Kisuke says, but they're not our allies. Vizards hate Soul Reapers as well. But he doesn't say that in the manga. It's a very minor difference. From the manga perception, it's very much Isshin is speculating, and then Kisuke's deflecting this, neither agreeing with him nor denying, and saying that, and then just moves on to say, but the fact that they contacted Ichigo. So it's almost as if manga Kisuke is intentionally misdirecting Isshin into thinking those thoughts, whereas anime Kisuke just outright goes, yeah, but they're not our allies. Vizards hate Soul Reapers as well. So it's very interesting to see what this means for the Vizards and what side they lie on, if they even lie on a side. We know, it may not be a parallel line with these two sides. It could very well be a triangle. There could be three sides. There could be an unknown fourth. It could be a square we're dealing with. We don't know at this point, but that little manga difference just opens up a whole can of worms with, is Kisuke just outwardly lying? Or is there something else that we're not seeing? I mean, there's lots of things we're not seeing.
Yes, we definitely can tell that Kisuke knows a lot more than what he's letting on.
I mean, it's Kisuke. But yes, there's definitely a lot more. Still with the whole conversation between Kisuke and Isshin is Ichigo's imminent arrival. So in the anime, you've actually got like them saying, oh, we need to do you sense that? It's your son. We need to go. Everybody scarper. And then Ichigo. Everybody starts their name with like I-C or I-S, and it's confusing me. Sorry. Yep. Ichigo turns up and there's no one there. But in the manga, that doesn't happen. It's much more impressive in the manga, because Kisuke starts listing everybody who's in this war. This war? Is it a war? We'll call it a war. And he's talking about us, as in Isshin and Kisuke. He's talking about the Vizards, and then he says the Soul Society. And then the very next panel, it's the Soul Society. So it's got a lot more kind of impact because he's talking about the Soul Society, and then it is the Soul Society. Whereas the anime dampens that by having this whole conversation with, your son is coming, quick, I think we should all go home now. And it kind of loses the punchiness of the jump cut to the Soul Society.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the Soul Society's ears were burning and they just had to turn up, and it's the captain's meeting.
Yeah, I wonder if that was more of just to placate to like Kon's later almost slip up of letting Ichigo know what his dad really is.
Yeah, because that's viewed with a flashback in the manga. So it's like he's talking and he's like, "Oh, does your dad seem strange?" And then he's like, "No, wait, no." And he puts his hand over his mouth, and the like kind of flashback is Kisuke saying, "Oh, remember, don't say anything that we've said here today."
Yeah, I think that would have played out much better in the anime as well.
Yeah, but with the anime, they had to give something for the other people to do. So. This is just a small one, but it's actually really interesting. When Shinji's talking about all of Ichigo's friends, and it's got pictures of Orihime and Rukia and Renji and those kind of like Ichigo's friends that he can rely on. In the manga, it's really random. When he talks about friends, it's actually Renji, Yumachika, and Ikaku who are shown, and Rukia's nowhere in sight.
Oh.
It's actually quite funny how, it's just Ikaku and Yumachika are classed as Ichigo's friends, and it's like, oh, okay.
That's sweet.
Poor Rukia. And then when Ichigo drags Shinji out the classroom, in the anime they go all the way down to the ground floor, but we know from previous seasons that Ichigo's classroom is actually on the first floor, or second floor, the one that's above the ground floor. So you got the ground floor, and then you got the first floor in the UK, but I think it's first floor then second floor in America, isn't it?
Yeah, it's
You enter on the first floor for you guys, don't you?
Yep.
Whereas we enter on the ground floor and then you go up to the first floor.
Although I will say, a few of the dorms at my university, it's a mixture of either ground floor then first floor, or first floor then second floor. It's so confusing.
That's random. I'm confused with this conversation, but I can't remember going to your university and going, right, yeah, I live on the first floor in this building, but on this building I live on the second floor.
Yeah. Even America, we don't know what's up.
So, yeah, we know that Ichigo's classroom's not on the bottom floor, he's on the next floor up. So in the anime, when he drags Shinji, he drags him all the way downstairs, because then you see that scene where Tatsuki's watching them and she's on the same level as them. Mm-hmm. But in the manga, he just drags him outside, and when you see Tatsuki looking at them, Tatsuki's actually on the floor, on the ground outside, looking up to the next floor up. So there's just that little shift of Ichigo dragging Shinji, the implication that Ichigo dragged Shinji all the way downstairs and through the school to get to the bottom floor instead of just dragging him outside. Speaking of Shinji, I love you, but that whole that whole hugging of Orihime was just blowing the consent line a little bit too much.
That was a very over-familiar interaction.
It was. But it's like, I don't know, maybe he did it just to get a rise out of Ichigo, because of the whole, like, maybe he knows that secretly Ichigo and Orihime like each other, so he was just trying to get a rise out of Ichigo. He got a rise, but it wasn't for the right reason, so... I don't know, that's... yeah. I mean, Shinji. Whatever. And then the other one that I have is just their name meanings. Hiyori talks about their name meanings, and Orihime is a princess and Chad is a tiger. And the first part of her name, Saru, is monkey. And then the difference is that in the anime, Hira is flat-footed, whereas in the manga, it's common. It's just like the word common. So Shinji's like, oh great, so now I'm an adjective. Whereas in the anime, he's like, oh, I'm an inanimate object. What's this? So, when we first see kind of like Ishida and Ichigo in the classroom, both doing their whole angsty thing. Honestly, these episodes are like the Order of the Phoenix of the Harry Potter universe. All the high school angst just comes out.
Mm-hmm.
You've got Ichigo just going, I'm a Vizard. I'm just like you. You don't belong with them. It's like he's lamenting over his loss of... he's thinking about Shinji. Whereas in the anime, there's that's when the flashback happens of his turning up at the area where Grand Fisher was defeated, and he's more thinking about the loss of the spiritual pressure that he had sensed. I mean, Ichigo sensing spiritual pressure in itself is a huge feat, so now he's lamenting over the fact that he couldn't sense his spiritual pressure anymore, which ties into the fact that the previous scene that we'd had in the anime was an anime only scene when they're all telling him to Scarpa. So it just links it in, whereas manga is literally just angst over Shinji Shinji asking him to join us, and him thinking that he doesn't like what he should do, in the whole remembering his hollow. So it's the start of his whole hollow remembering thing.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's really all I had for episode 112. For episode 113, let's start things off with a fandom community contribution. This is Lothmírë from our fantastic Deadly Discord server, and they have sent us in a voice clip of some of their thoughts for episode 113.
Hey guys, it's Lothmírë. Just want to touch on a few key points that stuck out to me in episode 113. We start off with Ichigo being totally overwhelmed and freaking out over his hollow, and Karin comes in to confront him about knowing his secret. It kills me that he lies to her face and then moments later drops his body and runs off to go take care of the spiritual pressure. Bless Karin, she covers his butt, and I don't know if it's for his sake or for Yuzu's, but she does it anyway. We're also introduced to two new characters who arrive like a freaking meteor in Karakura Town. It's the first time we've ever seen anybody enter the world of the living and leave a physical impact like this. We discover that they are some of the Arrancars, and their names are Ulquiorra and Yami. Yami seems ridiculously annoyed and confused by the fact that the people cannot see him, but he says he's been to the world of the living before while he was masked. He then begins hoovering up souls, and we've never seen a hollow eat like this before, which is honestly terrifying. There are dead bodies everywhere. Is this addressed later on? Is there mass hysteria happening in town after this? We don't know. We also find out that they were told that there are 3 dangerous individuals, and they are supposed to kill one of them. This begs the question of who? Are they talking about some of the people over at the Shoten? Are they talking about some of these new visored characters? Are they talking about Ichigo, or heck, Ishin with his freaking Hiyori around his shoulder? I don't know. There's also this sweet discourse between Orihime and Chad, where he totally validates her, and it makes my heart so happy that she's being told it's okay to not be a fighter. She's just as important doing what she does, even if she doesn't quite believe it yet. And then on that note, Ulquiorra points out that it's not a healing power. This is the first time we're hearing this. He says it has something to do with time and space regulation, which is an interesting note to think on. And those are the things that stood out to me the most. Thanks.
So yeah, thank you very much, Lothmírë. And the thing that stands out to me is they bring up a really good point about the 3 dangerous individuals that I'm going to not be able to say this name. Ulquiorra.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I've ever said it properly before. Ulquiorra said that there were 3 dangerous individuals, and that really struck me as something that I had written down as well. It's like, who are these 3 dangerous individuals? It's obviously they're surprised at how well Tatsuki's doing in this situation. And then, of course, Chad turns up and Orihime turns up, and again, they're surprised at them. But it's not Tatsuki, it's not Chad, it's not Orihime. So it does make you wonder who these 3 dangerous individuals are.
Yeah, definitely, because we're finding out that there are so many dangerous individuals in this small, little, sleepy town. It's quite interesting how much fighting power we have seen in just these past couple episodes. And it could be anyone. And I wonder if it would be something where we are thrown the bone to think that it is Ichigo, but maybe it's not necessarily.
It also brings in the Vizards as well, because at this point we know of at least one, possibly two, or assuming Hiyori is a Vizard as well after the conversations that they had last episode. So how many more of them are there? Is there more than three? Is there just three and they're the three dangerous individuals? Or are Yami and Okiura not even knowing that these Vizards exist, and in fact there's more than three dangerous individuals? Or are the Vizards not as strong as we think they are, and they're not on the radar of list of they should be worried about?
Yeah, definitely. And then you also ask the question of who sent them, because obviously it wasn't Yami, and it doesn't seem to be necessarily Okiura that's calling the shots here. Maybe it's Aizen, since Yami said,
is that confirmed? I think that's confirmed, though.
Yeah, because he says, let's bring back, or should we bring back Orihime as a present to Aizen?
So Aizen's the one calling the shots, so...
I mean, he's been calling all the other shots.
I mean, it makes sense, yeah. So who does Aizen know in the world of the living that is a threat? Everybody.
Yeah, for sure. But it's like, he just got out of his fight with Ichigo, and maybe he sees him as a legitimate threat against him. Although it didn't seem that he considered Ichigo much of a threat back in the Soul Society. So maybe he is more concerned about Kisuke or Ishin or someone else. It's quite interesting to see like what is going on and that Aizen is concerned about and sends these two powerful Arrancar to go and take care of.
Yeah. These Arrancar are very... I mean, Yami practically destroyed Tsubaki, one of Orihime's very friends. Very friends. And there's just, both him... There's a stark difference between him and Okiura as well, though. Okiura just seems a lot more calculating. He was almost as if he was just watching and observing, and Yami was the muscle. The brains and the brawn of the operation are right here, guys.
Yeah, I found it interesting how Okiura was curious about Orihime's power to the point where like he was breaking it down as wondering if it was healing at first, but then thinking maybe not so. However, he didn't even question Chad and his arm.
No, he didn't, did he?
Yeah, it was just like, he's just trash, do away with him. It's like, but I'm pretty sure he wouldn't confuse him for a Soul Reaper. And we haven't seen anything else that might indicate that Chad is not unique. So it's like, why would he not see Chad's arm as something interesting if Orihime's fairies are?
Yeah, and it's like, it's not every day like some random human just turns up and grows an extension to his arm and, can hold his own.
Definitely something.
Unless they already knew about him, and that's why it's not surprising.
True.
Because...
But if they knew about him already, they would have known about Orihime, wouldn't they?
But Orihime didn't really use her powers in the Soul Society until after Aizen had already left.
That's true.
So it could be that Aizen doesn't know about Orihime's powers, but he would, Chad used his powers in the fight against Kuraku, and if Aizen was watching everything, then he would have seen that fight against... The drinking session? That scenario with Kuraku. So he would have already known about Chad and probably already warned them about Chad. Oh, be careful, this guy with an extra arm, not an extra arm, but arm armor may come up.
That's true.
Whereas this is more kind of confirmation that Orihime wasn't just there for cheerleading aspects. She does actually have a role in this group,
Mm-hmm.
which Aizen had never seen until just now.
But going on Orihime more, not healing.
Not healing Chad, like shouting Chad's name over and over and over again. Come on, Orihime. Is that what you're talking about?
Well, that too, because it's like, you could do more than just that, but also, her power is not healing. But something else.
It's time reversal?
Time or space, even Ulquiorra's not quite sure, but I mean, he doesn't think it's worthwhile looking into, but it's not healing like many of us thought it would have been. But yeah, I feel like it's something that is definitely going to play more in the future, because the fact that he brings note to it, it's kind of like the old saying of, if you see a gun in Act 1, it better be killing someone by Act 3.
Mm-hmm. And I think as well, like, the whole way she calls them, I reject, it's not something you would say when you're healing someone, is it?
Mm-hmm.
I reject. So it's definitely...
It's like, I reject your wounds. Heal now.
So when we first meet Orihime and the Shun Rika, they kind of explain their powers. This is when... if we think back to when Ishida crunched that hollow bait, and all these hollows are flying around, and that's really when everybody started getting their powers awakened. And Orihime saves Tatsuki from the big hair monster with the things that eat them.
Yeah.
Yep. So that's when Orihime first gets her powers, and they talk about their what it really is. And they reject beyond the shield. They create a barrier between you and the enemy and reject any attack aimed at you. So the two of us reject behind the shield. We reject destruction in the area behind the shield. In other words, we can reverse any damage to the person covered by the shield. So it's never explicitly stated that it's healing here either.
So they do say they reverse the damage.
They reverse any damage to a person covered by the shield, yeah. And they reject destruction in the area behind the shield. Which goes to say that it doesn't necessarily have to work on people. Like, from what I'm taking there is that Orihime could then use her powers to...
Restore a broken pot.
Restore a broken pot, yeah. You know, I broke my mother's favourite vase. Can you fix it for me?
That sounds like something that'd be very useful to our clumsy Orihime at times.
Exactly. So, that being said, so really, Ulquiorra's kind of
right.
Making the right speculations, but also adding a little bit more.
Yeah.
With the whole time and space and... Orihime's a TARDIS. Done. Problem solved.
I'm about to offend all of the people from the UK. I have only seen one episode of Doctor Who.
It's okay. It's a lot. Yeah, mini Orihime rant. She spent a good, 5 minutes just crying and calling Chad's name over and over again when... I mean, she does it in the manga too, so it's not too much of a difference. But she could have just healed him there and then.
Yeah,
it was a little bit of a, Orihime, you're better than this.
It's like, it's not your first time doing this. You
No.
You should have grasp of heal, then GTFO.
Let's go back a little bit and talk about Karen.
Yes.
And Lothmírë points it out as well, with the whole Karen knowing about Ichigo then denying it, and then Ichigo 2 seconds later jumping out of his body and going off to save Orihime because he can sense the Arrancars that have just arrived.
I feel like it's also part of, like... So, Ichigo, of course, is in his, like, depressive state. Karin just comes in and blurts this out. Of course, Ichigo at first is going to deny it because it's like, he wants to protect his family. That's why he doesn't want them to be aware of this. And in his mind, not saying what's going on is going to be protecting his family, because otherwise it would just be dragging them into the danger because they want to help or something like that. But I feel like when he dashes off, you could just see that kind of like hesitation for a moment, but then I feel like he kind of had a bit of acceptance where he realized this is the way it is and I can't hide this forever. So I accept that Kari knows, and this is just kind of like a confirmation to her that she's not insane.
Yeah.
But also showing like this is something that I have to do.
I think as well he might have weighed up the options as well. He's like, I can sense that something's happening. I need to go, but I'm not going to be able to do that and still keep the lie afloat. What's more important, lying to my family or protecting the people I care about? And Karen would fall under the people that he cares about, and he's probably realizing that he's going to need to tell her in order to protect her even more.
Mm-hmm. And which I think also is actually possibly helpful for his position and like his struggle of what to do with everything in general about the Vizards and him being his inner hollow. It's like this could play an essential part of that kind of accepting things as they are and not constantly feeling like everything he has to do has to be hidden from everyone or only on his shoulders, but rather accepting that not everything is in his control, not everything can be perfectly molded how he wants.
Mm-hmm. With that then, I could probably move on to manga anime differences, because there was a few points with regards to Ichigo and his hollow.
Let's see here.
In the differences, unless you've got something else.
Nope, that's all I had.
Nope, okay. So the main point with regards to the manga anime differences is that in the anime we have this lovely conversation with this hollow Ichigo that's not in the manga. Yep, the whole conversation with the hollow, it isn't in the manga. In the manga, it's literally just Ichigo lying on the bed, him saying, I can hear him. There's the whole... It's kind of like a flashback of the times where he's worn the mask. There's a lovely screenshot of the kind of... the other Ichigo. You remember when he was in his inner world?
Mm-hmm.
Yep, there's a lovely screenshot of that. It's that guy. And it's basically just an internal monologue, an internal struggle with himself. And then he's like, what am I supposed to do? Whereas the anime actually gave life to his memories and thoughts and gave him a voice and threatened him and, you know, kind of added to the angst a little bit.
I feel in this case I actually prefer the anime one, because if you just have it as a thinking back and inner monologue rather than actually confirming that the hollow is still inside of him and still present, I feel the manga is just kind of downplaying the actual imminent threat and risks that Ichigo has to overcome, while the anime is reminding that yes, it's a very real thing and it's a very active fight.
Yeah, I mean, to give the manga its dues, it does... You can sense the tense in it, the way... Like, if I send this to you, so it's probably easier to explain it if you can see it as well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so, like, even from the artwork, the way it's written is like, ever since then, I can hear him inside of me, his voice calling me. He's getting closer and faster all the time. He's closer now than he was a second ago. I don't need Shinji to tell me. I can feel it. If I can't stop him, I'll be swallowed up. So you can definitely sense the urgency and the tense in there. The anime just kind of accentuates it with giving the hollow a voice and a whole conversation.
Yeah, because in the manga it feels more of like right now Ichigo has it under control, but he can feel that the hollow is still there and getting stronger. And he's not sure how much longer he can keep it bottled up.
Yeah. And then the rest of the differences are just little minor details. There's a conversation between Yuzo and Karin. So in the anime, you've got that whole conversation between Karin and Yuzu, and Karin deciding not to tell Yuzu about the conversation and keeping it within herself, keeping the conversation just between her and Ichigo. That's not in the manga, basically. There's no conversation with Yuzu. So I kind of like that anime bit where it kind of highlights their relationship a little bit more, and you can kind of see the similarities between Karin and Ichigo in the sense that they are keeping the secret bottled up. They're not, especially with regards to Yuzu, who we know Yuzu's a lot more kind of, not a fragile, but more emotional than Karin. And Yuzu knowing what her big brother gets up to, probably not the best of things with regards to her mental health, and she's just going to constantly worry. So I think Karin not telling Yuzu was a good move, and I like that little scene in the anime of just them two. You can see how protective Karin is over her sister and keeping this secret to herself.
Yep, Yuzu is definitely the more sheltered of the bunch, probably for good reason.
Yeah, bless him. And then Chad's arm got censored. There's a lot more blood of Chad's arm in the manga.
Isn't that
but
just
we
kind
know
of a
about
thing,
censorship.
though?
And then the big one. It's about Orihime.
Oh,
Because
what happened?
majority, it's not a manga anime difference if it's not about Orihime. And to be fair, it's not that bad. It's not that bad. But in the anime, there's a lot of her thinking about herself and whether or not it's a consequence of the past arc, something that had happened in the past arc. She mentioned that she's been to the Soul Society twice, not entirely sure what was going on there. And she's very kind of angsty and woe is me before she turns selfless. Whereas in the manga, she's very much straight out selfless, not wanting to bother Ichigo, berating herself for even considering that he will come and help. Whereas, because she's like, why am I thinking of Ichigo? I shouldn't rely on Ichigo to come and save us all the time. He's got enough things on his own plate that we should be able to I should be able to stand up for myself and do this and without having to bother him. So it's just that tiny minor difference that I think the anime had put it in because they had to link back to what had happened in the previous arc, whereas of course that didn't happen in this arc. It didn't happen in the manga, so it's just very much Orihime being selfless, not wanting to bother Ichigo, knowing, even though she doesn't know what's happening with Ichigo, she knows there's something wrong, and so she's willing to do her part and not say anything, and hopefully take Yami out, but unfortunately she doesn't.
She'll save someone one day.
Yeah. And that is pretty much it for manga anime differences. So thank you once again to Lothmírë for sending in that their own thoughts on this episode. It was great to listen and bounce off and all of that. Let's move on to our Shinigami Cup Peroxide edition. Shiki, what have you got for best ship?
For my best ship, well, it's not an actual, ship. It is Karin and Ichigo's brother-sister relationship, because every time that they're together, whether it just be the small bickering or anything, it's always sweet, and I don't know, I just love it when I see how close they are as an actual brother and sister and how much they actually care for each other. It's just something kind of wholesome about their relationship that I love.
That's so wholesome, I love it. And actually, in stark contrast to mine, my best ship is another sibling ship, really, and it's Hiyori and Shinji. So ship these two how you will. I am very much I ship these two as siblings, and you can kind of see it in the scene. They're arguing, they're fighting. There's the inappropriate poking, but then a very second later, you've got a very subdued Hiyori. She's showing kind of like that little bit of vulnerability with the whole "I hate humans, I hate Shinigamis," and Shinji's just like, I know. So you can see there's definitely history between them. There's definitely that kind of relationship, and I just see it so much as siblings. So that's where my best ship goes to. The annoying siblings of
Yep,
everything
I know
you would
that
want out of a
feeling.
sibling. Like, they're not going to let you forget that you have a sibling.
Yep, I have 5 younger and 1 older. I know what it's like.
So, who wore it best for you?
Running on the Shinji and Hiyori, for mine it is Shinji wearing Hiyori's shoe print, because he definitely deserves it.
Oh, he does. He does. Bless him. He does, yeah. Whereas mine is another look, and mine is Ishida's look of defeat.
Mm-hmm.
When he goes and asks his dad, and just the whole kind of it would have been nice to see kind of more of an internal monologue with him and his decisions, but just when he goes at the end and he's just like, I want your help. That was my who wore it best. And a double take.
So for my double take, it was just the collateral damage of Yami breathing in. It's like, how are they going to explain that? Because, I mean, sure, probably blame it on like a meteor crash or something, but
Or a gas leak or something.
who knows? Maybe the government's got connections with the Shinigami world or something to play it off, but it's definitely going to be weird to report that on the news.
And my double take was, it's the whole conversation with Isshin and Kisuke, and Isshin's regret, and his only regret in the past 20 years was not being able to save Masaki that night. That whole kind of... And I wouldn't have spotted it had it not been... Shout out to my sister, because when we watch the anime and the manga, I read the official Viz translated manga. We watch the subbed, and she's got a fan translation manga, because sometimes there's some stark differences with regards to the fan translation versus the official translation. And this, basically, it just had a translator's note that said, why is it saying night here when Masaki died in the day? And that whole revelation of night versus day, Isshin saying his only regret in the past 20 years was not being able to save Masaki that night, that whole thing did a double take for us. And it's going to be interesting moving forward if that ever actually comes to light, or if it is just a translation error. So with that, shall we move on to our fandom shoutouts?
Yes, let's do that.
Alrighty, would you like the honours of going first?
Sure. So for my fandom shout out, I'm going to shout out the cosplayer on Instagram, Ash Pichka. I have totally butchered your name probably, but be sure to check the descriptions for her Instagram. She has actually done a number of Rukia cosplays. Let me just post that in the chat here. And these are actually quite good, in my opinion.
Oh, wow. Definitely. And it's worth noting as well that there was a minor spoiler for upcoming arcs, so enter at your own risk. But if you don't mind about spoilers and you do want to check out this amazing cosplay, it's really good.
Yeah, cosplay community never ceases to amaze me.
Yeah. I like that. And like, if you scroll further down, she's got like group ones with different other characters as well. They're kind of cool. Like there's Asane in there, and Yuichi, and Unohana, and Rangiku. So that's cool to see as well. Like the little group ones. So my fandom shout out is going to be our Discord server. We are on the tail end once this episode has been posted and you're all listening to us, we will have just finished our June Discord birthday challenge, just celebrating 3 years here on our Discord, and we've put together a challenge in which we collabed with someone else in the community. So we've got amazing fit collabs, artist collabs, role plays, cosplayers, all that, anything and everything collab to celebrate what an amazing community we've become. So my fandom shout out is definitely check out the works that have all been submitted for this challenge. They're going to be great. I haven't read any of them yet because they're not out yet, but when you're reading them, once you're listening to this, they will be out, so you can check out the amazingness that is our fandom community.
I'm looking forward to reading some of these.
So yeah, that is it for another episode. How do you feel?
It's definitely a heavy-packed couple of episodes, and I'm looking forward to this season for sure. Even though I am kind of miffed that we had to skip my favorite arc, but that's just my personal opinions.
This is an editor Lethan insert. Shiki, I wasn't on the episode, but if I was, I would tell you you've got fucking shite taste in arcs. Go and watch Turn Back the Pendulum. Now back to the show.
It's okay, you can go back and watch the bounce whenever you want.
Oh, trust me, I am.
Alrighty then. Well, you wonderful souls, that is the end of another episode. If you liked what you heard and want to get involved, you can find us by searching for TheSeireitei on Tumblr, Instagram and Facebook, and TheSeireitei on Twitter. Each of these platforms will link you to our fantastically deadly Discord family, where you can chat with us about the show, read fan fiction, take part in creative challenges, and talk anything and everything Bleach. Now, Ichigo and Rukia might reap souls, but we're hoping to reap some 5-star reviews, and that's where you come in. Make like our favourite orange-haired protector and Ichigo to iTunes to rate us, review us, and make us feel like number one. To those of you who are listening on YouTube, don't forget to be like Chad and give us that good thumbs up. We really appreciate it. On the next episode of the podcast, we will be covering anime episodes 114, Reunion, Ichigo and Rukia and Shinigami, 115, Mission, The Shinigami Have Come, and 116, The Evil Eye, Aizen Again. Well, see you souls then. Till next time. Bye.